Hey, what's up guys? Pastor Zach here. I don't know where you find yourself today or how you would consider your life to be up to this point, but regardless of where your life is at or was at currently, all of us have a story. Some of us have stories that are full of difficulty and pain and hardship, and others are filled with just fun times and good memories of life. Regardless of where you're at, God wants to be a part of that story. And so each year we gather a group of students and leaders to share theirs. And so this is Stories.
Hi, my name is Brenda.
Hi, my name is Drew.
Hi, I'm Jaden Skorpanich.
Hi, my name is Cody.
And this
And this
And this
And this is my story.
Hi, my name is Brenda. I go to Vista Marietta High School, and this is my story.
We're ready in 3, 2.
So growing up, God was never really in my life. I grew up with my two parents, and they were both Christian, but we never really went to church. And if we did, it was for holidays like Christmas and Easter. And I wasn't really part of a youth group, and one of the main reasons for that is because I had a lot of anxiety when it came to meeting new people when I was younger. I grew up as an only child, and I didn't have any family members that were my age growing up, so I always had trouble meeting new people. And that led to a lot of jealousy and anger and bitterness in me. I would see my friends that had the perfect life and the perfect family with siblings and amazing parents, and I wanted that so bad. I would tell my parents that we were a broken family and that we weren't normal, and I would never be happy if I didn't have someone like that. And so time went on and it got worse. I felt really alone and anxious, and I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. So I would go to places with friends, and I would just sit there and not know how to talk to people and be really awkward. And so that was really hard. I always felt like weird. And then, so I met these friends, and they were nice and cool and all, but they didn't have good morals and they weren't godly people. I didn't have any godly relationships in my life. And they went against God, and I knew that it was wrong, and I was always different because in the back of my head I knew that God was important, but I didn't follow him, so I didn't really know what that meant. When they would do things or say things, I wouldn't do it, and so they thought I was weird, and I thought I was weird. And so, but I put all this effort into these relationships with people I thought actually loved me and cared about me. And when lockdown happened and school shut down, I thought I had these amazing friends that would care about me and everything, but it was obviously they didn't, because I would put all this effort in to make sure they were okay, and they never did it back. But I thought it was normal, and I was really struggling because my grades were going down. I didn't feel like doing anything during lockdown. And then school came back up, and I was going to my junior year, and I got my schedule for the year, and I didn't have any classes with anybody I knew. So that was really hard, and I was complaining, and I was like telling my parents that I was gonna be so alone and it was gonna be the worst year ever, but they told me, don't worry, you'll make a friend or two, and I did not believe them. So I walked into class, first day of school, Avid, and I sit down, and I didn't know anybody at my table. And I looked over and I saw this girl I thought was cool, like maybe she could be my friend, and it was Natalie. And I started talking to her a little bit, and I thought she was cool, but I thought it was normal to have friends who were fake and didn't really care about me. I thought it was just a me thing, that I would never find anyone that actually wanted to be around me. And so when she started actually putting in effort to talk to me and be my friend, it was weird. I didn't know what that meant. I thought it was it would never happen. And so I was so happy. I told my parents that I finally made a friend and all these things, and they were kind of surprised because I didn't like talking to new people that much. And so we started talking a little bit more, and she cared about me, not just about me, but also about my relationship with God. She knew that I was a Christian growing up, but I didn't really have that foundation. And so she invited me to youth. And at first I told her no, I didn't want to go. I don't like people, all these things, all these excuses. I had homework, it was a school night. And she didn't stop. She kept asking and asking, and I was kind of getting annoyed. I told her that my parents would say no and all these things, but she asked me, did you ever actually ask your parents? And I was like, no. So she told me to ask and to really try, and so I did. I asked them, and they said yes, which was shocking to me, but also kind of upsetting because I mean, I wanted to go, but I also wanted to stay home and take a nap. Like I didn't really want to. And so I went, and I was scared because I thought that I would walk in and wouldn't know anything and people would like judge me or something. But when I walked in, and I realized immediately that these people were like loving and welcoming, and it was God's love was surrounding me. And so that was amazing. And I came home that night and told my parents about it, and they were so proud, and I was so happy, and I kept going back every single week, and I loved it more and more. I started going to Sunday services, and I started actually living my life for God. And summer camp was coming up soon, and I was so excited to go, but I didn't think there was any way I could go. I thought that it would be too expensive, and my parents wouldn't let me go away for a whole week because I'd never been away from them. And then God blessed me and allowed me to go to summer camp. And the minute I got there, I realized that it was everything that I ever needed. I saw all these people who had godly lives and who were just blessed with God and Jesus and the relationship, and I wanted that so much. And that's when I was saved. I gave my life to Jesus, and I knew that that's all that I ever needed in life, and He was the only approval I needed from anyone. So I came back, and my parents were telling me like recently how it was amazing to see me have a purpose in my life, because before youth and God, I just was kind of there. I kind of just existed. I didn't talk to anyone. I just was sad all the time. But once I found God, I actually had a purpose. I had something to look forward to every day. And I still struggle. I still have times where I get anxious and jealous of people. And sometimes I'll feel like nobody would ever actually like me and that I'm a burden to people. But God told me and showed me that I don't need anybody else's approval. I just need Him, and He's my foundation. And He blessed me with my two best friends, who are my sisters now, Carolina and Natalie. This whole time I wanted siblings more than anything, and God blessed me with my two sisters, and of course the entire youth family and Pastor Zach. And so I have two verses that I think perfectly go with my testimony. One is Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and courageous, do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave or forsake you. And my other verse is Proverbs 18:24. Friends come and go, but a true friend sticks by you like family. My name is Brenda. I go to Thrive, and that was my story.
Hi, my name is Drew. I go to Great Oak High School, and this is my story. My story starts when I was born into a Christian household. Everything was good. Went to church every Sunday. I accepted Jesus into my heart when I was like 6 or 7 years old. I got baptized when I was like 9 by Pastor Jim. And I was just one of those typical church kids. And then when I went into middle school, I'd go to youth group every Wednesday night. And we had youth group during Sunday night with Pastor Shane, and that was really fun. And that got me connected with a lot of like church kids. Because school friends were not the best at the time, especially in middle school. Like, they would say not the best things. And so it felt like I was getting more and more connected with better people and more like fellowship with good people in my life. So that really strengthened my relationship with Jesus. And then I went to church camp, high school church camp, which was like the best thing ever. I learned a lot more than I already knew at the time. I learned what it meant to actually like love people that didn't love Jesus, and to prioritize my time better for Jesus and have the right friends for Jesus. So my freshman year of high school, like the first semester, I would hang out with my old friend group at the time, which were like the secular, the worldly people that were not the best to hang out with. So I ended up leaving them, which was a hard decision for me because I've known them for like a while at this time. So I kind of just drifted away from them. I went and hung out with like the right people from this youth group. from this church nonstop. I would hang out with them during break at school, during lunch at school, during like after school, doing like activities, Bible studies. It was great. That really strengthened my relationship with Jesus Christ, and even them as people too. I then started getting into like apologetics during this time a lot, which is like defending your faith against people who don't believe in Christianity. And so that really like motivated me to start evangelizing more with people, especially like with people from school and people who don't like Jesus and just don't like me because I'm a believer. And so I would do that, and I would evangelize, and I realized that a lot of people do not love Jesus in my school. And it kind of broke my heart, because me knowing the fact that they're gonna go to hell one day really broke my heart, because if I didn't do something now, then maybe they won't be able to be saved. And so I would just keep on evangelizing and getting turned down, and I would invite them to youth group, and I felt like unsuccessful. But then I read John 15:18, and it says, "If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you." And this caught my eye, because it gave me a sense of comfort during this time, knowing that I'm not the only one being hated, that they hated Jesus too. But it also, again, made me my heart broke, knowing that these kids hated Jesus because they didn't want to have a relationship with him. And so I would just keep on like striving for this relationship with them, to get closer to them and invite them to youth group, and I just keep doing that, and hopefully it all goes well. But I kept doing that, and then end of freshman year hit, and nobody really showed up to youth group like I wanted to, and again I felt unsuccessful, not with my life, but with like my relationship with God. I feel like I wasn't doing enough, trying to like focus on bringing people to youth group. And like during middle school, I remember I'd ask my neighbors to come to youth group, and they'd always come. I'd bring like 4 or 5 people to youth group sometimes, and it was great. And then again, high school hit, and everybody's attitude and mindset changed, and they kind of didn't really believe in Jesus anymore, or even like want to go to youth group. And so I would pray more and more about them. I would pray as much as I can, just hoping like maybe if I just keep praying for them, that they would keep showing up, and that they would show up, and they would want to learn more about Jesus. And so I would pray, and and a lot of the times it seemed like the prayer wasn't working. Like I would pray, and then that day or the next week, like nothing would happen, and it feels like God wasn't listening. Like I knew, like, because I go to church every week, I would hear Pastor Jim say these things like, God's always listening, God's always listening. But when you actually experience what it feels like when it seems like God isn't listening, it kind of like, it made me doubt myself and doubt what I was doing, because maybe I'm not doing something right. Maybe I wasn't evangelizing good enough. And so I kind of like, I don't know, I still doubted myself as much. So I would watch videos on YouTube of like more apologetic stuff to try and get better at evangelizing. I read the Bible way more after that, because that was around like, that was the winter high school camp that I was doing that. And so I kept reading the Bible, praying, and connecting with kids from youth group and from church, and just getting more and more fellowship in so I can strengthen my relationship with Jesus and actually learn more of what it's like to evangelize and everything. And then I read Romans 12:12, and it says, "Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer." And I read that, in the last part it says, "Be constant in prayer." And that meant a lot to me because I would find myself praying at night and before dinner and maybe before breakfast, and that was it. I wasn't praying through the day, through the night, even when I was awake, just thinking of what I could be doing better to evangelize to these kids. And that really like flipped a switch in me to the point where I felt like I was actually like figuring it out how to get my life, I guess, restarted in a way so that I could strengthen my life with Jesus, have a better relationship with my friends, evangelize better, grow in apologetics more too. So I found myself praying like during school, which was kind of weird for me because I would be taking a test and I'd also be talking to Jesus, and it was kind of the best thing ever because it's so quiet when you're taking a test and you're just sitting doing, well, hopefully you're not doing nothing, but you're just answering these questions and you're just talking to Jesus, and it's really fun too. Like, I found comfort in school and in these stressful times by just talking to Jesus more and more. So I found myself doing that more and more, and I realized like these kids were actually opening up more to me talking to them about Jesus, about evangelizing and witnessing to them. They actually started to have more conversations, longer, more in-depth conversations. They were asking me questions about crazy things. Like, some kid asked me, what would happen if you put a holy Bible in holy water? And he asked if it would like explode. And I kind of laughed at that, but then I realized he was serious. And then I was kind of confused. I was like, you really think that? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, nothing will happen. But I explained to him that holy water doesn't exist and that a Bible is a book. There's nothing physically good about this Bible, but it spiritually is amazing. Like, everywhere you read in a Bible, it's just in depth of what you should and shouldn't do as a Christian. It tells you how to love others. It tells you everything, how to have a good relationship with God. And I explained that to him, and he was very interested in what I was doing. And I realized, like, I'm talking to these people now, and they're actually listening. They're wanting to learn more, and I realized that my prayers weren't being unanswered, that they were just taking time to be answered. I just needed to be more patient with my prayers too, because I wanted them done so quick, just quick and fast. That's what I wanted, and that's not the best thing to have, not at all. And so realizing this, I felt more comfortable with Jesus, being able to talk to him way more and more comfortable with like regular things, because I knew he was actually listening, and I grew in understanding that Jesus will answer a lot of prayers, not in a single instance like we want it to. We want it done so quick, but I realized that that won't happen. And so I've set a small goal with getting one kid from my second period class to come to youth group, because that's the class I get most persecuted in. Every time I say something about Jesus or church related, I usually get like a bad comment, like, oh, why do you even do this? Why are you a Christian? All this stuff. And it used to push me down, my feelings would be low and I'd just kind of like slump in my seat and get shy and not say anything. But now I want to have a good relationship with these kids so that I can love on them like Jesus has loved on me and eventually get them to youth group, because that'll just be an amazing accomplishment for me. Just anybody from my second period class would be amazing. My name is Drew. I go to Thrive, and that was my story.
Hi, I'm Jaden Skorpanich. I go to Temecula Valley High School, and this is my story. I grew up in a Christian home. My parents are still together, and I first found Jesus when I was in second grade, because at my church, my pastor decided to tell us about it, and he was like, you know, kids, you really need Jesus. I found Jesus when I was in second grade, and my pastor decided that it was important for us to know Jesus, and he told us how to do our ABCs, which was admit that we are sinners, believe in Jesus Christ, and then come to know him. And I thought that was simple enough, so that day I did it. But I didn't know like really how to live like that. Until I got to third grade. I was fully healthy that summer. I played softball all year. I was running around like a maniac like the maniac I was. And then something hit me and my family really hard that we never imagined would happen. I was diagnosed with brain cancer, which, if you don't know what cancer is, it's where your body, where one of your cells starts deteriorating and destroying other cells, and then it multiplies like regular cells. But the problem with that is that your white blood cells, which are your defending cells, do not realize that those are bad cells, so they just leave them alone. So your body starts destroying itself from the inside out. I was third grade when I started having headaches, and my mom brought me to my pediatrician, and she said, oh, well, she's having headaches, she's probably dehydrated. Let me give her some medicine and some water and just make sure she's drinking. And we did that for a week, and the headaches just kept coming. And then my mom took me to urgent care, and the headaches just kept coming. And even the school nurse got to know me, because at that time, if I had a headache, my mom would just pick me up and take me home. And then the headache started getting worse. And all the adults around me started disbelieving me, especially my parents, being educators, started believing that, well, she's trying to skip school and she doesn't care about her education, and she's just doing what all of the third graders are doing, just faking it. But that wasn't true, and it got worse. And it got to a point where I couldn't even think anymore. And so one day in November, at the beginning, my mother took me to the emergency room. They did a CAT scan on me, and they found that I had a brain tumor. The average adult brain tumor is the size of a nickel. The brain tumor in my head was the size of a lime. So they life-flighted me in a helicopter to Rady Children's Hospital, where they gave me an MRI and found that the brain tumor was cancerous. I had medulloblastoma, which is a type of children's brain cancer. And the reason I was having such big headaches was because the tumor in my brain was blocking the brain fluid from flowing in my head. So it was giving me headaches, and the headaches kept getting worse, like nothing I had felt before. That day I met my doctor, Dr. Crawford, who specializes in children's brain cancer, and he was willing to walk the whole step of the way through it. I then had to wait for my brain surgeon, Dr. Levy, because he was doing brain surgery in Chile with Doctors Without Borders. But thankfully they put a tube in my head so that brain fluid would flow and it wouldn't hurt as much anymore. My Dr. Levy then flew in from Chile, and he was able to successfully perform the brain surgery. And then after a couple of days in the hospital, after already being in there for a couple of weeks, my surgeon, Dr. Levy, came back to my family and said that they would have to re-perform the surgery. And so a couple days later, I went back in for my second surgery, and now I have a candy cane shaped scar on the back of my head. Along with that, I also had to get a portacath, which happened to be another surgery, which was a needle that was stuck into my chest. In order to get the medicine in, I had chemotherapy, which was a medicine that they had to push into my body, which made my hair fall out and made me lose my balance. And with the hearing loss, you have hair in your ear, which helps you hear the vibrations. So with that, I lost some of the hair in my ear, so now I can't hear really high vibrations. I lost my balance, so when I had cancer, all my legs were all bruised up, yellow and purple. It looked like weird, I looked like a weird alien. With the chemotherapy medicine, you puke every 3 days after taking that medicine. So every 3 days I would puke because I had to take it at least once a week. And that time I lived in Wildomar, which is just a city away from Murrieta. So that meant driving from here to San Diego or here to Loma Linda every day for a year. And I was poked with a needle over thousands of times, which was surprising to me because at that time, by second grade, I was terrified of needles and shots and blood. But after about third grade, I had about 1,000 needle pokes, and I had radiation therapy, which is where they have to send lasers into you so that they can try and kill the tumor that's left over. With that, I got tattoos by third grade, and that was pretty cool because no one believed me. But I believe, even though all that physical stuff was hard, the hardest thing for me was the spiritual stuff, because I saw the strongest people in my life fall away from God, and they started doubting Him, saying, "Why have you put this upon us, Lord? Why have you done this to us?" I had never done anything wrong. I had never smoked nor drank nor had any of the above. I never broken the law, and I was only in third grade. And so my mom, my dad, even my little sister, my grandparents, they were like, "Why?" But then one day, as I laid there in the hospital bed watching SpongeBob SquarePants and the Michigan football game, my dad found the world's best Bible verse, which was Romans 8:28. "For God causes all things to work for good, for those who love God, for those who are called according to His purpose." You see, God promises that no matter what we go through, He will be there. He is standing right beside us. For the Lord Jesus had to die on the cross for our sins and take our suffering away so that we may live with Him. And He promises that no matter what we go through, He still loves us and He is still taking care of us. I have now been cancer-free for over 8 years. And even though my family has doubted God and has tried to walk away from Him, I really tried to keep my faith, and I was like, no, we're gonna pray about this. And it was the big things like the surgeries to the little things like my mom getting mad about the traffic through Temecula to San Diego. Now I work with the first graders in the Treehouse Ministry. At Temecula Valley High School, I am the president of our Christian Club, Student Venture. I am also a section leader of the Low Reeds and the Temecula Valley High School Band. I oversee every bass clarinet, bassoon, bari saxophone, and tenor saxophone that comes through. And I've also in our school's choir, and last year I was in our school's musicals, the SpongeBob SquarePants the musical. I believe that God puts a difficulty for everybody's life to try and teach them and to try and show them that He is still with them and that they can rely on Him. And the sad thing is that sometimes a lot of people decide, well, if this bad thing happened to me, then why would God be there for me? Because God doesn't love me like that anymore, or God can't be real. But the truth is that God is real, and He's testing to make sure that you really love Him. And life has not been easy for me. It hasn't gotten better. Last week my grandfather just died, and we had to bury him. My grandmother has died. My favorite dog in the world has died. Even now I'm having to take medicine after medicine, and even now at home, every Sunday after church, I have to give myself shots so that way I can grow and with my bones, because my growing process is slowed down, and I have to take vitamin D every day. So my life hasn't gotten easier, and it hasn't gotten better, but God, like He said, promised He would be with me, and He undoubtedly was with me. Thank you. My name is Jaden. I go to Thrive, and that was my story.
And action.
Hi, my name is Cody. I barely graduated high school, and this is my story. So growing up, I was exposed to Christianity and the Bible pretty early on. My parents made me go to a private Christian school pretty much from preschool all the way through my freshman year of high school, which was pretty funny considering my family never went to church. We never really followed the Bible or anything like that. And really my focus in my life was never on God or church or anything like that. It was always on actually the sport of motocross. In actuality, my whole viewpoint on Christianity and the Bible can really be summed up by kind of a funny story that my mom still loves to tell to this day. From when I was in preschool, the school had to call my mom and tell her to come pick me up because I was throwing a temper tantrum that was so bad that the teachers couldn't control me. Apparently I was throwing toys all over the place and everything. It was a mess. So the school called my mom and they told her to come pick me up, and she asked, what the issue was. And they told her what was going on, that the teacher said that it was time to put toys away and take out the Bible to do the daily Bible reading. And apparently that just made me so mad that I threw a tantrum and was throwing toys everywhere and really just started screaming out, I don't want to read this stupid Bible. Which the story itself, while it might be funny, really kind of set really the tone for how I would view Christianity for pretty much the majority of my life. Especially considering my main focus was always on the sport of motocross. So my dad got me my first dirt bike when I was 4 years old, and really pretty rapidly it took off for me. It went from riding once or twice a week up and down the neighborhood to, by 6 or 7, I was racing every single weekend, riding it during the week. By the time I was 10, I was traveling across the country, going to amateur nationals and racing literally every weekend, and me and my dad would be gone for weeks at a time, And by the time, around that time, my parents kind of really noticed that I had a really natural skill for the sport. I was winning a lot of races. I was doing really good. I had a lot of companies and a lot of big name sponsors kind of noticing me. You know, it had progressed to the point where I was traveling across the country for these amateur nationals that would last for about a week at a time, racing every single weekend, doing all the big series around the state. And I was at the track training, you know, 3 to 4 nights a week. And pretty rapidly, my parents realized that I had a pretty natural gift for the sport. I was doing really well. With no real training other than just going to the track and riding. So about 11 years old, my parents sat me down and had the conversation with me of, do I want to pursue it as a career? And of course, what 11-year-old boy wouldn't want to, you know, say yes to pursuing a career of racing dirt bikes for their whole life? So of course I had said yes, and if the sport had been an obsession for me leading up to this point, from that moment on, it became literally the only thing I would think about. It was the only thing that my life revolved around. It changed everything for me. Not just in kind of family dynamics, but as well as my friend groups. And by the time I was, 13, 14 years old, I was getting signed to factory race teams. My dad was taking me, weeks and weeks at a time to go all throughout these states, racing these races. I had pretty much cut out all my friends that weren't involved in the sport of motocross because every waking moment that I had available was dedicated to this sport. After my 8th grade year, my parents sat down and we had the discussion of, if we're going to pursue this even heavier, then we can't be going to normal school because it takes too much time. You're missing so many weeks that the school's pretty much telling us that it's not going to work. So my parents made the decision to homeschool me so I can pursue motocross full time and do school in the afternoons and the evenings. So that really catapulted a lot of things, both for the good and for the bad. So on the good end of it, it provided me a lot of time to really practice and train and refine my skills, but it also gave me a lot of free time to kind of get myself into a lot of trouble. And while I'm refining my skills, I'm getting better on my dirt bike, I'm getting faster, and I'm doing better at these nationals, and I'm winning more local races, and I'm making a bigger name for myself. And it kind of got to me in the sense of, I thought I was a rock star at that point. I was popular at all the races, I was hanging out with everyone. At 14, all I cared about at that point was exactly that. Going to the races, winning, riding my dirt bike, hanging out with my friends, chasing girls, getting myself into some trouble, which is pretty easy to do, unfortunately. But at the same time, I also found myself kind of falling down the wrong path with the friend group I had chosen, which in the sport of motocross is also very easy to do. It's a very dark sport where it has a very heavy party lifestyle. The whole sex, drugs, rock and roll thing is very much prevalent, and it unfortunately still is today in that sport. And I quickly found myself kind of going down the road of, I still wanted to race full time and do it as a career, but I didn't want to put the work in anymore. I wanted to go hang out with my friends because they were out partying on the weekends instead of going to the track and training. And this real change in dynamic in my mentality and everything like that started to weigh on me a lot. It started driving a wedge between me and my dad, because at the time my dad's trying to play the role of, obviously my dad. He's playing the role of my trainer, the one that's financing all of my racing, the one driving me to all the races, the one spending all the money to do this. Because if you don't know anything about the sport of motocross, the only thing you really need to know is that it's probably one of the most expensive sports you could get into. And so my dad noticed this kind of change in my personality and my mentality towards the sport. And he noticed I wasn't really working as hard anymore, and he started getting harder on me. And of course, me being the stubborn teenager I started fighting back with him. And it really kind of drove a wedge between me and my whole family. Me and my sister already didn't really have a good relationship because of all the time I was taking with my dad away from her. The things she was being forced to go to the races to with us as well. And just everything was kind of just going downhill. Which is a pretty common occurrence in motocross as well. They say it'll either bring your family together like no one's ever seen, or it'll tear your family apart completely. And unfortunately for me, it was on the road towards tearing us apart. Fast forward another year or so, I'm 15, 16 years old. I'm even more so involved with that friend group that I really shouldn't have been involved with, doing things I really should not have had no business doing. But add into the mix that I had started to get hurt a lot. I started breaking bones, breaking wrists, concussions, dislocated shoulders, all these different things, to the point where I was pretty much found myself addicted to pain pills by the time I was 15, 16 years old. I felt like I couldn't function without them, which at that time kind of made it even harder for me too, because it's really hard to function when you're high on pain pills, operating a dirt bike and trying to race full time and be professional and be successful. And all leading up to this point too, I had already kind of been dealing with some mental health issues and some depression and anxiety issues. And at this point in my life, it really kind of accelerated, especially when I started getting more concussions and more injuries, because here I am on the sidelines, for 6-7 months at a time, watching all my friends progress and keep winning and doing better and better. And it started making me really bitter towards the sport, because that should have been me in my eyes. I should have been the one out there winning the races and getting the rides and making the money. But instead it was my friends. And looking back, that's obviously the wrong mindset to have had, but in the moment, I couldn't control how I was viewing it. And so finally, when I was 16, 17, I finally got healthy a bit. I had some time where I had about 6 to 7 months where I was injury-free completely, which was kind of nice for me, because for the most part, I would go get hurt, be out 6-7 months, come back for a week or two, get hurt again, be out for another 6 or 7 months. And it was just a repetitive cycle of get hurt, be off the bike, come back, be behind the ball, be pushing too hard to catch up, and then get hurt again. And so all of this is just really weighing on me physically and mentally, and it's weighing on my family. And my dad's just, the relationship between my dad at that point had pretty much disintegrated to the point where we couldn't even really be in the same room together without us almost fighting, which was really hard on the rest of my family, obviously, as well. But eventually, when I was 17, I was finally healthy for a bit, had some good months of racing, and I was able to earn the points for my pro racing card. And I also got picked up by a team called Moto Triple X, which was awesome for me, because the team was great, the bike was great, and I was stoked to finally have a real shot at racing again that I felt I deserved. Unfortunately, about 4 months after I got that ride, I completely shattered my wrist again, and I was out for 9 months. And it was just another repetitive cycle of, okay, so in those 9 months, what am I doing? I'm not going to the gym like I should have been. I'm going hanging out with my friends and partying and chasing more girls and just kind of leading myself down a darker and darker path, basically just on a full rocket ship towards rock bottom. Eventually I heal up from that one, and I'm 19 at this point, and I'm getting ready to make my pro debut at the Anaheim Supercross at Angel Stadium. And 2 weeks before that race, I got hurt again. And after this injury, my parents kind of sat me down, and they pretty much told me that they were done, that pretty much everything was over, which was the hardest thing for me to hear, because that was my whole life. Motocross was my entire identity. Everything I ever known, everything I knew what to do, everything who I was what revolved around motocross, and that was suddenly just ripped away from me. So after I heard that, I was like, okay, just trying to figure out what to do with life. I was kind of lost and just kind of wandering around, not knowing where to go. So I decided to go to college. But about a couple of months before the college would start, I had found myself just so upset, just down in a hole that I couldn't see a way out of, that I decided, you know what, it's just better if I'm just gone. And it was a very rash decision in the moment, where I was just in my room at night. I had a brand new bottle of pain medication that I just got from the doctor, and I took the whole bottle, and I was done. I was ready to be over it. And this is how I know God was working in my life, because I woke up the next morning with just nothing more than a stomach ache, which shouldn't have happened. With the amount that I took, I should have been dead. But instead I woke up and I was even more angry, because here I am, I failed at motocross, and then now I failed at even taking my own life. Like, how can I mess that up, right? I didn't tell anyone what happened. I just chalked it up to some food poisoning and just kind of went about my day and just moseying along. And just going through college and just trying to figure life out, trying to figure out where I was gonna do, where I was gonna go. And then when I was 21, I'd reached that point again of planning out where I was going to take my life again. And I had it all figured out this time. I wasn't going to fail. And then I got a message from a guy named Scott Parkinson on Facebook. He had ran a company with his brother John called Panic Grove Ministries. I didn't know that it was Panic Grove Ministries because they had actually sponsored me when I was racing at one point, and I just knew them as Panic Grove. This has a clothing company. And all the message said was a simple, hey, just want to see how you're doing. We want to invite you out on this Sunday night. We're having a celebration for a new facility that we're moving into. That just so happened to be the day that I was planning on carrying out my plan to take my life. And something inside me just kept nagging me to say, go to this event. And eventually I messaged back saying I would, because I figured what's the harm in delaying it a couple hours. So I show up. I reply back to him saying, yeah, good to see you, good to talk to you, I'll be there, looking forward to it. I show up and I find out pretty quickly it's not just a celebration of a new facility, it's actually a church service. And so when I realized that, I was kind of looking to make my way out and leave because at the time I had no desire to follow God. I had no desire to even acknowledge God. I was so mad at him because of the path my life had taken, even though it was all on my own actions. That kind of led me down that path. But Scott cornered me that night, and he kind of showed me around and introduced me to some old friends. And I decided to stay. And I was like, whatever, I'll hang out, say goodbye to everyone. And the message that night was one that I'll never forget. It was one of those messages where it feels like he's talking to you and you're the only person in the room. And I remember staying that night until 4 o'clock in the morning, talking to him and his brother, and just broke down. And it was that night that I truly decided, I'm like, okay, you know what? I told them what I was gonna do, what my plan was, and we talked through all of that. And eventually they just straight up asked me, do you want to follow God? And something was telling me to say yes, so I did. And from that night, I gave my life to Christ. And in my head, I thought everything was going to get better, but it didn't. It was one of those things where things kind of stayed the same. And it took a lot of work on my part to realize that it was going to take effort on my own part to really change things. Things didn't immediately get better. It took a few years for me to really figure out life and to figure out things and to figure out my walk with Jesus, and to really stop blaming God for my own mistakes that I'd made in my life. I began serving with them. I actually served an internship with them over a summer. I went to all of their camps. And then the real turning point in my life, though, was when I was about 23, 24. My brother-in-law at the time invited me to come to his church, which ended up being the Orchard, and because he thought I'd be a good fit to serve with the youth. At that time, I had honestly hated kids and teenagers. So I literally laughed at him, but I ended up showing up anyway. And pretty quickly I fell in love with him. And from that moment on, really, my walk with God was completely different. I was on fire for him. And that's not meaning that things have been easy. Things have always been hard. I still struggle with depression and mental health issues and anxiety and things like that really kind of drag me down. But now I have the awesome students of Thrive and Pastor Zach and all my friends here at the Orchard that really kind of help center me and really focus me when I'm in those moments. And most of all, I really have my small group boys that really kind of help keep me centered, whether they know it or not. And so with that, one of the verses that really sticks out to me the most that I really carry with me, it's 2 Corinthians 5:17. And it says, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come." It's really always kind of reminds me that no matter where you're at, no matter what you've done, no matter how low you might feel, God can always redeem you. And he's always with you. And if you just give your life over to him, he'll make you into a new creation. My name is Cody. I'm a leader at Thrive, and that was my story.